number one responsibility for these seats in the boat is the rowing. So when I've got my legs down flat and leaning back, arms like that, the three-man, who in Athens was Ed Code, his feet then are right behind me. He's then here. He's got his oar going out to the left. Then behind him is James Cracknell, same side as Ed, so we've got what's called a tandem in the middle. And then we've got the bowman, Steve Williams, who just gets in before the counter here. And then the bow air tank is basically up to that wall. So it's from the flowers nearly to that wall is how long a fore is. At its widest point in the middle, it's about that wide, just wide enough for you to get your hips in. In Sydney, we had to have a boat that wide for Redgrove's arse, but if you ever meet him, tell him that face to face, he finds it so funny. When you stand in the boathouse before you go out for this race, you've got to be sure that the guys around you are going to do what's required. Technically, of course, mentally, but also physically, because you're starting that Olympic final at absolutely the peak of your powers. And 6 minutes later, you're spent. You go through the human energy reserves in 6 minutes. And we spend a long time building them up. You train your body to be an eating, fueled machine. 6,000 calories a day, no problem. Well, it's problems after you stop, let me tell you. But so you've got to be sure that the guys around you are going to be willing to go through that process, because it's not pleasant, it hurts. And the last third, last quarter of the race, you know, we just heard about Winston Churchill talking about dark days. They are dark, almost literally for some people. I've rowed with guys who talk about having kind of tunnel vision in the last quarter of the race. And it's a very well-known physiological phenomenon. As you work harder and harder and go and go and go for minute after minute after minute, your brain begins to divert blood towards your muscles that are working so hard, harder than it can keep up with, away from things that it doesn't feel are important, like seeing. And so you begin to lose your peripheral vision, and you begin to lose your hearing. And yet somewhere in your mind has got to be this cool, calm center. You know where you are, what you're doing, how much you believe in yourself, what to do technically. All of those things are going on in a very calm and rational way, you hope. There are other jobs other than the rowing. Me here, I'm stroking the boat. So I'm essentially setting the rhythm for the guys behind me. And during the race, they'll get very little say in what I'm going to do. So they are trusting me to a huge degree to say, right, whatever you do, we are going to follow you. And that is almost the acid test of any rowing crew from schoolboy up to elite level. How cohesive is it? How unified is it? And so one of the reasons we train for so long and for so hard is we've got to build up that trust between us, so that I get used to knowing what they're going to feel like and vice versa, and it's all going to be very smooth and unified. Because come the crunch, they have to do what I'm doing, even if what they are seeing they think is wrong, even if they disagree with my decisions. The worst thing is when they're sitting up here and I'm doing something different to what they, we might be sitting in 5th place and we seem to be slipping further and further behind, and they're thinking, why aren't we going faster? Why aren't we going faster? It's so natural to think, right, I'm going to do everything I can to win. They have to follow me. And if I make a mistake and it costs us the race, then we have an interesting chat in the boathouse afterwards. But as soon as they begin to start doing their own thing and start thinking, no, that's wrong, we've got to do something different, then we're going to lose whatever. You cannot win in that situation with a kind of rowing anarchy where everybody does what they want and thinks is best at that particular moment. That's terrible. So me here, they are entrusting me with the rhythm. And there's an immediate sense of responsibility being here. What would cost me sleep before an Olympic final is not whether I'm going to win a gold medal or not. not whether I'm going to lose one, but if I make a mistake, it's not only going to cost me my gold medal, it's going to cost these guys their gold medal. Now that really does worry you. But by the same token that they're trusting me to stroke the boat well, I'm trusting them to do other things. One of the jobs I'm trusting them to do is steer. Everyone imagines that we steer this boat by pulling harder on one side or the other. But we don't. We've got a rudder. And the rudder for our 4, I'll tell you what, I'll use my name tag, is, roughly speaking, half, about that big. It lives under the stern down here somewhere, attached to on top of it's like a pencil and a little crossbar, and there are 2 little rudder wires. They come through the stern air tank. They go past me, run along the sides of the boat, past me, past Ed, and they turn into the middle and attach to one of James Cracknell's shoes. And his is the only shoe that'll move like that. It'll pivot left and right like that. So this will move left and right like that down there. The problem is, like any boat's rudder or ship's rudder, it's increasing resistance in the water. That's how it works. So every time he moves it, not only is it slowing us down, but you're adding distance to the total that you've got to row. Now, no one can see it working. It's down here. But you can feel the effect. And me sitting here, I can see the wake where we've been for probably 100 meters. And the worst sensation for me is when you look back and there's been a straight bit, and there's a turn, there's a straight bit, and there's a turn, a straight bit, like that. At which point me, turning around and offering helpful, constructive criticism to James about what he's doing with the rudder, is completely useless. We talk a lot about, in rowing races, about putting the blinkers on. And that, like those kind of old-style Shire horses or police horses, the leather shields either side of their eyes, you shut out the distractions. And for us, distractions are weather, opposition, crowd, the Olympics, the fact that it's the Olympics. And for me, sitting here, James operating the rudder 8 feet away in my boat, who ideally want him to win a gold medal and do this job perfectly, it's a distraction. There's that immediate human sense when you're most under pressure and lots of people are doing slightly different jobs that you want to do everything in your power to make it go better. And the immediate sensation is you've got to rush around and help everybody. And in fact, what we've got to do is divide it up. They're not going to help me with the stroking. I'm not going to help him with the rudder, and if he's making a mistake, I can't worry about it, even if I can see it. Because if he makes a mistake and I see it and I react to it, then we've turned actually 1 mistake into 2, because actually then the rhythm will change, even by turning around. Never mind saying anything. And in a 2,000-meter race, 280 strokes, you've only got a chance to make 1 or 2 small mistakes. And if you start escalating them, it starts unraveling very quickly. There's one last job, and that's calling. 2004 was a disastrous season for us. 92, the first 3 medals in that box, 92, 96, 2000, essentially were trouble-free. We were dominant, we were winning all the time, we were world champions, we were favorites, we were market leaders, the conditions were great, all of that. It was almost our race to lose. Not that that's easy, but it's much more in control. 2004, the season was a disaster. We got beaten by the Canadians every time we went out to race in the spring and early summer. In the last race before the Olympics, we were beaten again. And there was a young guy sitting behind me called Alex Partridge, who finished that race in Switzerland. We were in 4th or 5th. And he said, it just feels like I'm rowing on one lung. And we kind of rounded on him and said, look, mate, here's his first Olympic campaign. Look, mate, this is what it's all about. You've just got to knuckle down. That's what it's going to feel like. We felt slightly sorry when he was diagnosed with a punctured lung a week later, and he had been rowing on one lung. And the doctor said, it's a punctured lung. He had a stress fracture of his rib. He had been rowing on one lung. You're out of the Olympics, 6 weeks to go. See you later, Alex. Cheers. We got another guy, Ed Code, from the other part of the rowing team joining our crew. 6 weeks to go before the Olympics, we're changing our boat. Every logical rowing bone in our body is screaming, you're not going to win from here. We've never changed boats before, we'd never changed crew. We were always, not only were we losing, but now the losing combination is getting changed for, not ideal. And what we had to do is establish a way that Ed was going to get pulled into this combination, that he was going to feel part of it. And we spent huge amounts of time talking about our priorities and how we were going to row. And that last 6 weeks running up to the Olympics was the most intense it's ever been. And when we sat down the night before the final, we were pretty certain it was us against Canada for the gold medal. And so you describe a plan, you lay out the race. It's 6 minutes long, you think what's going to happen, what's the opposition going to do, you talk through lots of different eventualities, and you give Steve Williams the voice in the crew, because as he's rowing along, he's going to be saying and calling various orders. Not many, he's got to row at the same time. It's not going to be a Shakespearean monologue. He's going to bark out a few little code words during the race to establish this is good or no, we need to change that. And so you build up these code words, and we probably had 5 or 6 that we knew were going to be fixed, and another 2 or 3 at his disposal from a list of maybe 10 or 12. And just as we were getting up from the table, this is the night before the Olympic final, James said, I want to change the last call. And the last call is normally go or sprint or kitchen sink or something. And he said, instead of being last 10 strokes, I want it to be last 30. And so when we say last 30, we're obviously a lot further away from the finish line, but we nail it for 30 strokes. We give absolutely everything, count them down in your head, and bury yourself during those 30 strokes. And if we totally commit to it, we will overtake if someone's ahead of us, or we will move away from someone if we're already in the lead. We said, fine, okay. And we talked through it because the main risk is that you're going to cross the finish line and think, I could have given more. That's a nightmare. And by doing that 30 and completely burying yourself, we knew we were risking losing every medal, but we would never have been able to say, oh, we could have done more. Fine. So the next day, the race starts at, I think, 10:15 or something in Athens. And the first 3 or 4 minutes, the lead is changing backwards and forwards with the Canadians. I think it changed 6 or 7 times. And 500 meters to go when that video starts, I was already reasonably tired. And I thought, I know exactly what's going to happen now. And I was listening out for the call. And at about 420 meters to go, I heard last 30, go. And so I started sprinting as hard as I could with what I had left. And it felt like the boat kind of lifted out of the water and started shooting forward. And out of your peripheral vision, I've got my opposite number, Barney Williams, the stroke man. He's kind of over there because they were ahead of us to begin with. 29, 28, 27, 26, 25 strokes to go. He kind of comes level. It's like, oh, nice to see you again. 24, 23, 22, 21, 20 to go. We're ahead. 19, 18. I'm now not level with my opposite number. I'm level with the guy behind him. So we're 1 man up. That's about 5 feet. 19, 18, 17, 16, 15. Yeah, moving. 10, 9, really struggling now, just thinking, just get to 0. We're going to win. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Look over to see how magically far we are up on the Canadians, which is about 2 men more probably, which in the scheme of the race was fantastic. The biggest lead any boat had had. The less good news was the finish line is supposed to be just there, right there. And I had to turn my head like that to see the finish town. It was kind of over at that angle. The problem, as I later figured out, my brain caught up, was that he called last 30 at 400 meters, and 30 strokes carries you about 300 meters. So when we got to our imaginary finish line, we were still 100 short. So my elation went from we're going to win, to we've lost in an instant. And my oxygen-deprived brain, I'd love to give you a romantic spin on this, my oxygen-deprived brain said, well, 1, we've lost. 2, you cannot row the next 100 meters. You're going to stop. 3, if you're going to stop, do it as soon as the Canadians come past you, because if you stop when you're ahead, that'll look really bad on TV. There's courage for you. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to row 3 more strokes, rowed 3 more, had another look, we were still ahead. I thought, okay, it's going to carry on another cut. Rowed 2 more, still ahead, 1 more, just ahead, 1 more, and now we're level. And that was about 1 stroke to go. And I looked over and saw Barney, because that's how you judge whether you're level or not, and he was looking back directly at me. And as we found out in the bar about a week later, both of us thought exactly the same thing at that precise moment, which was, that's good news, we're going to win a gold medal because he looks knackered. Now, I'd love to be able to say, oh, then that gave me the courage and I plucked up some, good old British pluck and I thought we're going to win this, and I just refused to lie down, and no, out of it. Then the finish line comes flashing past and then you're lost in a haze of oxygen deprivation and all the rest of it. But what I'm proudest about Athens is that more than any other situation in my career, the ingredients were far from perfect. They were ridiculously bad. And we then constructed a plan to deal with it, however crazy and, looking back, risky and even half-baked it was. But we said, right, that's our plan. We all agreed on it, and then we executed it to 99%. If the Canadians had beaten us by that much, I would be standing here saying, yeah, I've got 3 gold and a silver, but we couldn't have done anything more, because I know that to be a literal truth. Thankfully, that's a hypothetical by that far. Thank you very much.